people say you made so many shots under, so much duress and pressure. I'll tell you what pressure is. Pressure is playing for Larry Bird.
So Bird, for me, was the toughest matchup I ever had during the course of my career.
All of a sudden, this name keeps coming. Bird. He goes to the right. Bird. He makes the shot. Bird. I said, God damn, who is Bird?
There are great players. And then there's Larry Bird. The moment his name comes up, something shifts. The room gets quieter, the stories get louder, and the praise, it's different. Because Larry wasn't just respected, he was revered. Every era, every corner of the league, everyone who faced him or played alongside him talks about Bird like he was a force of nature. A master of mind games, a ruthless competitor, and a genius with the ball in his hands. Players who've seen it all still talk about his toughness. Coaches still marvel at his court vision. And fans, they still watch his tape like it's gospel. The way people speak about him, it's not just admiration. It's like they witnessed something unreal. Like they saw a ghost on the hardwood who couldn't jump over a phone book, but somehow dominated everyone in his path. This isn't just about stats or rings. It's about impact, legacy, presence, because when you hear the legends talk, one thing becomes clear. Larry Bird wasn't just a great basketball player. He was something more, something rare, something unforgettable. Some rivalries define an era, and none are more iconic than Magic versus Bird. Magic never shied away from calling Bird the toughest competitor he ever faced. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird didn't just compete. They elevated each other and the entire league in an era where basketball was nearing its downfall. Their rivalry was the heartbeat of the NBA in the 80s. Lakers versus Celtics. Every finals, every game was a chess match built on mutual obsession. But years later, when Magic stood at the podium for his Hall of Fame induction, he made sure to give credit where credit is due.
Larry, you just what a basketball player should be. The biggest reason that I'm here is because of you making me go to that gym every summer, not only staying for 4 hours, but I figured I better stay for 6 because I knew you were there about 5 or 6 yourself. It was tremendous playing against you, and I'm just happy, and I thank God that I got to know you, not as just Larry Bird, the basketball player, but Larry Bird, the man, and I appreciate you coming out here doing this.
They weren't just rivals, they were reflections of each other. Bird's relentless intensity, surgical precision, and icy trash talk pushed Magic to train harder, play smarter, and never get comfortable. Magic talked about how every time he saw Bird play, he knew he had to be better. And when they met in the finals, Magic didn't just want to win, he wanted to prove himself worthy of that stage. Magic could have credited anyone, but he chose Larry first, because behind all the highlights and Hollywood lights, Magic knew Bird was the one player who never let him rest. Michael Cooper built his career shutting down the best scorers in the NBA. Fast, physical, and relentless. He was the Lakers' defensive ace during the Golden Era. But when it came to Larry Bird, even Cooper had to tip his hat. He was the toughest player I ever had to guard, Cooper once admitted. Bird didn't rely on speed or power. He beat you with angles, footwork, and that ridiculous shot release that seemed to come out of nowhere. Every move had a purpose. Every possession was a test. And even with the help of the great Kareem, Cooper couldn't stop the legend.
Larry catches the ball, he goes up in the air, and here I come. And I'm like, I'm getting ready to smash this shit, man. So I jump up, and I got my hand, and I don't know how Larry got this ball between Kareem and I. Because Kareem had his hands up. I'm coming with my right hand, and he had a great pass. Like I said, I don't know how he got it to him. Hits Robert Parrish before it rolls to the basket, and Robert dunks it. And Larry looks over his shoulder at me and he laughs. He said, I told you, motherfucker. And you know what? That right there, that shows you the essence and who this guy was. He was about team, he was about winning, he was about making plays. And
What really threw Cooper off was Bird's mind. He wasn't just playing the game, he was seeing it from above. Coop recalled how Larry would whisper what move he was about to do, then do it right in front of you, not out of disrespect, but because he knew you couldn't stop it. Cooper respected that. He wasn't someone who handed out compliments easily, but when it came to Bird, he didn't hold back. You knew you had to bring your A game, he said, and sometimes even that wasn't enough. John Sally was a key piece of the Detroit Pistons bad boys era, known for their toughness, trash talk, and no-nonsense physical play. But even in a locker room full of enforcers, Sally held a deep respect for Larry Bird. It wasn't just Bird's scoring, though that alone could ruin your night. What stood out to Sally was how mentally unshakable Larry was. Bird played with a coldness that cut deeper than any elbow. You could trash talk him, foul him, knock him down, and he'd just get up, tell you where he was going to hit the next shot and hit it anyway.
And Larry looks around and goes, what's up, Sal? I said, no. He goes, you on me? I said, yeah, I got size on you right now. I've been watching every movie. He goes, y'all not double teaming? And he's looking around. He goes, yo. I go, nah, it's just me, fella. He goes, mouse in the house. Mouse in the house. And they change the play. And he catches the ball. He does this. And he shoots it. He says, Sal, you better ask for a double team, bruh. I got 2 quick fouls because I'm smart like that. Yeah, he was, and he was always in shape, and he hated Bill Laimbeer. So when you got a guy that hates somebody, he's playing for an entirely different reason.
Sally often recalls how Bird didn't flinch under pressure, and how he had an answer for everything. What amazed him most was that Bird didn't just talk trash, he spoke truth. He'd call out plays, talk to benches, even coaches, and still deliver. Sally once said, you could try to bully him, but he was tougher than all of us. And that praise means something. Coming from a guy who made his living bullying people on the block, Bird wasn't afraid of anyone. And John Sally knew, deep down, you couldn't intimidate Larry Legend. Legendary coach Nolan Richardson didn't coach against Larry Bird, but he studied him, and what Richardson saw in Bird went beyond stats or highlight reels. He saw a player who transcended the game. Before Nolan Richardson ever watched Larry Bird torch defenses in the NBA, he heard him. Back in the late 70s when Bird was still at Indiana State, Richardson was coaching college ball himself. He remembered driving late at night, flipping through AM radio shows, when suddenly every broadcast was going crazy over this white kid from French Lick dropping buckets like it was nothing.
And I'm listening to the radio, and I have no clue of the players on either team. All of a sudden, this name keeps coming. Bird. He goes to the right, Bird. He makes the shot, Bird. I said, God damn, who is Bird? Bird. You know, here's Bird, and Bird this, and Bird. Oh, did you see the pass that Bird made? I can't see it, but I'm just trying to imagine it. And when the time I got to the end, I said, damn, that brother can play. When I got the newspaper the next morning and saw Larry's picture, I said, damn.
Years later, as Bird took over the NBA, Richardson was paying close attention, not just as a fan, but as a coach, and what he saw confirmed everything he'd heard. Bird didn't rely on athleticism. He relied on his mind, his grit. Richardson often said that Bird was the kind of player who made coaches nervous, because you could have the perfect game plan, and he'd break it in 3 possessions. And what Richardson respected most, Bird belonged. In a league full of legends, Larry didn't just hang, he led. And Nolan made sure people remembered that. Bernard King was one of the most feared scorers of his generation, unstoppable in the mid-range, quick first step, and a natural-born bucket getter. But even King, a man who dropped 50 on back-to-back nights, admitted there was one matchup that always tested him more than any other: Larry Bird. He didn't just say Bird was a great player, he said Bird was the toughest player he ever faced. That wasn't about flair, it was about war. Every time they went head-to-head, it was a battle of will, execution, and pride. And Bernard knew if you weren't ready, Bird would bury you.
Well, Bird, I couldn't defend Bird at all. Obviously we're matched up. You're guarding me, and then I got to find Birds on the floor to switch over and defend him. And Bird was the toughest player I've ever had to face. The guy is 6'10", I'm 6'7". He can pass over the top of me, put the ball on the floor. He's a great rebounder and obviously a great scorer. And so Bird, for me, was the toughest matchup I ever had during the course of my career.
What made Bird such a problem for King wasn't just the scoring, it was the way he scored. Bernard talked about how Bird played with this surgical calmness. He wasn't rushed, he wasn't flashy, he was just inevitable. Shot fake, step back, fade away, net, over and over again. But the part King respected most, Larry could beat you mentally, physically, and emotionally, all in one quarter. Even for a certified killer like Bernard, Bird was a different type of opponent, a different kind of greatness. And when one legend calls another their toughest test, that says everything. Oscar Schmidt never played in the NBA, but he's considered one of the greatest scorers the world has ever seen. Oscar said that watching Bird from afar was like watching a basketball genius in motion. No theatrics, no gimmicks, just brains, buckets, and brilliance. He credited Bird for shaping the way he understood the game, not through flash, but through feel. And when he was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2013, he didn't hesitate to name the player who inspired him most, Larry Bird. In his speech, Schmidt thanked Bird for showing him what true basketball IQ looked like.
My guy doesn't run, doesn't jump, and play the best of everybody else. He's here. This is my idol, the best player ever, in my opinion.
What truly struck Oscar was Bird's mental mastery. He said Larry didn't rely on athleticism. He played the game like a scientist. Angles, timing, feel. Bird manipulated all of it with ease. Oscar even called him the smartest player he had ever seen. Coming from a man who scored over 49,000 points in global competition, that kind of praise hits hard. For Schmidt, Bird represented the universal language of basketball. Pure, unselfish, and precise. And long before the world got to know Oscar, Oscar knew who he wanted to model his game after. Larry Bird wasn't just a legend in the NBA. He was a global blueprint. Kevin McHale didn't just play with Larry Bird. He went to war with him, night after night, shoulder to shoulder, battling in the trenches. And even as one of the game's most skilled post players, McHale never stopped being in awe of Larry's mindset. What stood out wasn't just Bird's skill, it was his fury. McHale admired how Bird played with a chip on his shoulder, how he treated every possession like a personal challenge, especially against players or teams he didn't like. If Bird had beef with you, it wasn't just about winning, it was about embarrassing you.
So we get to the arena, and we're dragging, and we're sitting around the locker room, and everybody's kind of, we're tired, and all of a sudden, the coach gives a little bit of a speech of, "Come on, man, guys, we're playing basketball. Let's get ready to go." And Larry stands up, and Larry says a couple other few choice words, and he says, "I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to take it out on their rear ends." So I was like, "Oh, all right, so let's go." So we go on the floor. Albert King sitting there, and Larry walks up to Albert King and goes, "Don't take this butt whooping personally. I've been eating hot dogs all day." And then Albert King looks at him like, "You've been eating hot dogs all day? What's that got to do with me?" And we went out and just hammered them. I mean, we terrorized them. And that was Larry. There was no excuses. I mean, he just played. And I tell you, that was just his competitive nature. But a day when you fly all day and eat hot dogs in the airport, best thing was Albert's look on his face like, what hot dogs got to do with me?
McHale often told stories of Bird circling specific games on the schedule. He'd say things like, I can't wait to kill these guys. And then he'd go out and do it. Whether it was the Lakers, Pistons, or just a trash-talking rookie, Bird brought a fire McHale rarely saw in anyone else. He loved it, because for McHale, Bird wasn't just a teammate. He was the engine that kept the Celtics' edge alive. That killer instinct, that was real. And even in retirement, when McHale talks about Bird, it's with the reverence of someone who didn't just witness greatness. He went to battle with it. When Reggie Miller spoke during his Hall of Fame induction, he didn't just reflect on his career. He reflected on the pressure of living up to Larry Bird's standard. And not just as a fan growing up, but as a player under Bird's command. Reggie was coached by Larry in Indiana, and he said flat out, you didn't want to disappoint him. Bird rarely raised his voice, but his expectations were sky high. Every missed rotation, every sloppy pass, Reggie felt it. Because when your coach is Larry Bird, the ultimate competitor, the bar isn't excellence, it's perfection.
To Larry Bird, who taught me about work ethic. What's funny is, people say you made so many shots under, so much duress and pressure. I'll tell you what pressure is. Pressure is playing for Larry Bird. Not only playing for Larry Bird, but having to go to the Garden as he's coming back and win those games for Larry Bird. And Coach, for your 3-year run, you were undefeated as we went to the Boston Garden every time. We did not lose one. Well, I might have been hurt. Oh, you remember that one, huh? Okay.
Miller has said in interviews that one of the most surreal experiences of his life was being yelled at by Larry Legend in practice. Not because he was harsh, but because it reminded Reggie who he was playing for. And even during Bird's coaching tenure, that aura never faded. He still had the eyes of a killer, the mind of a mastermind, and the presence of a giant. Reggie made it clear in his speech, Bird wasn't just a Hall of Fame player, he brought that same fire as a coach. And playing for him, that was pressure few could handle. Lance Stephenson grew up hearing stories about Larry Bird, but it wasn't until he joined the Pacers that he saw the legend in person. By then, Bird wasn't suiting up, he was running the front office. Still, his presence was heavy. Everyone in Indiana felt it. Coaches, players, staff. Bird wasn't loud, but he didn't have to be. His resume spoke, and Stevenson said that as a young player, there was one moment that stuck with him forever. The day Bird stepped into practice, picked up a ball, and casually hit 10 straight threes.
So we stretching, right? So the whole team is just stretching. And Larry just walks on the court, like grabbed the ball and started jacking threes, like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I'm looking at everybody. I'm like, do y'all see this right now? And he made like at least 10 in a row threes. Like just walked in, came in, looked at us, and was like looking at us stretch and hit like 10 threes in a row and walked off and sat like he ain't do nothing. Like it was regular and folded his legs and just sitting there looking at us. I'm like, yo, this guy's nice.
That's Larry Legend right there.
I'm like, man, that's a legend right there.
No warm-up, no trash talk, just 10 shots, 10 makes. And then Bird put the ball down, turned around, and walked off like it was nothing. No smile, no flex, just business. Stevenson said the whole gym went quiet because in that moment, they weren't looking at a retired executive, they were looking at Larry Legend, the same guy they grew up watching on grainy highlight reels. For Lance, that story was more than just about shooting. It was about standard. Bird didn't need to talk anymore. He'd already proven it. Even in slacks and loafers, he was still the coldest man in the room. Larry Bird didn't ask for respect. He earned it. One jumper, one pass, one mind game at a time. From teammates to rivals, shooters to scorers, defenders to legends. Every voice in this story speaks with the same tone when they talk about Bird. Reverence. Not just for the stats, not just for the banners, but for the way Larry carried himself, how he thought the game, how he imposed his will on it, over and over, without ever needing to tell you twice. Magic Johnson says Larry made him better. Michael Cooper calls him the toughest he ever guarded. McHale watched him circle games on the calendar just to bury people. And Reggie Miller, he felt the pressure of Bird's standards from the coach's seat. Even in retirement, Bird left his mark, hitting 10 threes in a row in front of Lance Stevenson, then walking off like it was a Tuesday. What makes Larry Bird special isn't just that he dominated, it's that he stayed Larry through it all. Fierce, brilliant, cold. The praise doesn't come from highlight reels. It comes from the mouths of legends. Because once you've faced Larry Bird, you don't forget him. You remember the shots. You remember the silence. You remember the legend.